How's it going, everyone? Welcome to this completely different kind of video. Now, normally when I post content on the channel, I'm quite strict about the style, the format. I will re-record, and generally I like to have a certain standard, a standardization for the channel. But occasionally, very occasionally, very rarely, I might just post something largely unfiltered, or as some have colloquially come to know, Pyotr unhinged. And unhinged is the essence of this video. Because I had to talk about the post, Donald Trump decided to post a tweet on his Truth Social where he says a bunch of swear words. I'm not going to say it because of the YouTube algorithm being sensitive. But then he also says, praise be to Allah. Now, if you're of a different faith, that's not really the point. It's more, he says, as the leader of the Western world, such a statement on one of the most important days of the Christian calendar. I'm not overly religious. I don't really involve myself in religious areas on this channel. It's not the point. Of course, it's an important consideration in international issues and social etiquette and history and the motivations behind what drives international relations, geopolitics. But it's more just the general tone of this tweet, which, like myself, much of the internet has suddenly gone a little bit haywire over. Now, we're used to quite a lot of things when it comes to Donald. I'm just going to call him Donald. Maybe he'll watch this and he'll feel personally motivated to make a change. It is absolutely unhinged for more reasons than I can imagine. I've always tried to, entertain the idea that perhaps Trump is more intelligent or hope that there's a degree of intelligence behind Trump's statements, motivations. Some of you who watch other channels or content might be aware that they claim that the war in Iran is part of some broader, grand strategic goal of taking on China or undermining China by sort of weakening assets and factors related to China's sort of global strategy or position, i.e. you remove Venezuela, you remove Iran, and therefore China is weakened in the broader grand strategic chess game. Considering how the war's going in Iran, and we've had a jet taken out, and it's largely nailed the final nail in the coffin of any willingness I have to entertain that there's some broader deepening cleverness behind Trump. And this, I think, tweet just reinforces that. I posted a response, or I tweeted out the post, obviously with a reaction, and it got a decent amount of engagement. But a lot of people, some people who follow me, are hardline MAGA supporters, Trump supporters, who just, will come to his defense and say he's trolling. It's all part of a psyop. No, it's not. The guy is literally lashing out. He is losing his state of mind because the war in Iran is not going well. I think that's... And anyone who tries to claim that, well, we'll come to that in a moment because that's a separate point. But this is a kind of post that once you've posted it, much like if you put boots on the ground, you can't walk it back. It's allies see it, adversaries see it, everybody sees it, and it almost leads to a sort of inversion of reality, in that instead of leaders adapting to reality, you get reality being adapted to fit the leader. It's not about what's true anymore, it's more it's about what needs to be true for the essence of the goal, if you know what I mean. In this instance, Trump needs to achieve more things in Iran. He needs Iran to agree to a ceasefire or to open the Strait of Hormuz. And because allies haven't come to his aid, and because there's a growing resistance in America or whatever other law enforcement areas, the government system, he's running out of options and he's getting desperate and he's throwing a tantrum. He's throwing his toys out of the plat. It's textbook grandiose narcissism or narcissistic disorder. I'm not a psychologist, but I have spent a fair amount of time reading about psychology because I find it fascinating, and also because it's a cornerstone of international relations. If you want to understand how heads of state interact, how diplomats, ambassadors interact, you have to understand the basics of psychology. The other most obvious thing about this tweet is that its weakness designed as strength. One would assume that Well, it's not dominance. Trump is not, I think, to anyone of a reasonable education, coming off as a guy who's got it all under control here. He's a guy who's overcompensating in more ways than one, perhaps, but he's overcompensating for the lack of control that he has, the lack of ability to influence the direction and force the capitulation of the Iranians to do what he wants. But that just shows how desperate he is and how out of touch he is with the position, how out of his depth he is. The one thing I think a lot of us can agree on, be you left or right, and that's another point I want to emphasize, is that he lacks strategic depth. This isn't me attempting to provide a analysis of my political typology. It's simply that it's very lazy when people who are so supportive or almost infatuated, fanaticizing over one specific man are lazy to just say, oh, well, you're a woke leftist. And then you say you're a radical loony rightist. This kind of rhetoric doesn't help. Partisan as it is, the polarization that exists within American politics, but also more broadly Western politics, including the United Kingdom, is fundamentally the core to this problem as well. And that leads me to the other thing that I alluded to a moment ago, how disillusioned people are. Those who support Trump are so disillusioned with the establishment that has been arguably problematic in parts of Washington, London, and other parts of the West for a long, long time. Neoliberalism, the idea of sort of Western liberal ideas can come in and save the day, or some of the policies that we've seen, such as austerity or interventionism. These sorts of things have left a lot of people in more difficult financial or social situations disillusioned with the establishment, feeling therefore that people like Donald Trump, or perhaps in the UK, you may know Nigel Farage, and other parts of the political establishment in Europe, are the ones that are best placed to fix the situation. He just wants to retain power and ultimately make a buck, as we've seen with the amount of insider trading that has been going on in this government. Pete Hegseth, there was a Financial Times article just a few days ago discussing about the fact that one of Pete Hegseth's advisors, I don't know the exact, I'll post it in the description if you're interested, they literally were looking at investing, buying up some capital in a specific defense company. That's insider trading, because you know that there's a war going to be doing, or certain things related to the war are going to be happening, and therefore you buy in and then you sell out. Trump's entire financial strategy around Bitcoin is a massive pump and dump scheme, some people think, because, well, he's in power, he can do whatever he wants around the policy of Bitcoin or crypto more broadly, and therefore benefit from the fallout depending upon whatever policies or statements they choose to make. It's not just a cult of personality disorder, it is a literal worshipping. Maybe that is cultism. My point is that these people are so unwilling to see the forest for the trees that no matter what Trump says or does, it's fine. It's completely reasonable. It's all part of a broader plan. And so that makes it worse because they act as enablers. They make Trump more willing to push the boundaries each and every time. Every time that he says something, they're like, no, that's good. You should do more of that. Or we support that. Trump then thinks, well, I can go further and further. But this is the most powerful man in the world, the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military with a huge array of nuclear weapons. Now, as you know, I'm not exactly a scaremonger on this channel, but the idea that this man writing those things can have access to that red button is terrifying. No qualms about it. Although I like to believe that the American democratic system would ensure that never any such scenario would happen. But the fact is that Trump is in a war with a highly militarized, idealized state and is not getting his way. So how far might he be willing to go if he doesn't think it's getting anywhere at all? He has time and again said, we will be negotiating with the Iranians. They will submit to us within 48 hours, within 96 hours, within a week. They've got until the 6th. How many rounds are we going to do this? I know that's not a watch, but it's for theatrics. My point is, how many times are we going to go through this with this guy making the ultimatums that he does, only to hacko and not go anywhere at all? Because the ultimate implications of this is, of course, the reputational damage. But what additional damage is Trump willing to do to America in the international system? What impact does this have for Beijing, Moscow? Once he says these things in such a public way, how on earth can we think that the Chinese, the Russians, or anyone who wants to undermine liberal democracies in the West are thinking, Well, how else can we manipulate him? If he's this reactive, if he's this short-termist, if he's this emotional, what comes next? As it stands, the international system, a lot of things that we've taken for granted are changing. And as you know, whilst I would like to retain a belief in international law, that the reality is not what we'd like it to be, but as it is. And therefore we have to play the game. And if Trump is willing to make such statements at these, at such frequency, at such intensity, if he's willing to militarily invade Spain simply because they refuse to allow him to use their bases, where does it go from here? This is weakness designed as strength. It is an addiction to attention. It is the idea that Trump's not just doing this impulsively, he's doing it almost to be rewarded for his behavior. How far is too far? To what point do we ensure that this can't continue, that we see a return to a yesteryear of more measured engagement where we could talk to one another, a more reasonable, grounded debate? That's what I try to do on this channel, is to have debates with people that we have differing views on. Of course, there are limits. There are not people that I'm going to speak to out of principle, but I think it is a disservice to us and our intellectual capabilities as people to only speak about things that I like to hear. Can you really imagine leaders of the yesteryear, of Winston Churchill, of FDR, of Ronald Reagan, of Thatcher, or even George Bush, who wasn't considered the most intelligent of the lot, to speak like this, to behave in this way? Because it's not just about an unhinged message, it's about the significance of when ego, unchecked power, zero accountability all come together in seemingly an undisclosed and undefined direction. We have no idea what Trump's internal state is over the war in Iran. But clearly, it's not a very happy one. But that is not someone that I want to be determining what the rest of the global economy and, well, everything I like to enjoy in day-to-day life has so much power over. So yeah, that's it from me, everyone. To be honest with you, I didn't have a fundamental conclusion otherwise than to try to engage with people across the aisle in reasonable ways, to encourage critical analysis and less of this reactive, emotive, complete lunacy that is Donald Trump right now. But stay tuned, everyone. We've got some more measured, intellectually founded conversations coming up this week.